So what does peeling actually mean? Most players will simply label it as defending teammates and being a bodyguard. That description is fine, but it goes a step beyond that. Peeling and being a defender for your team is the control of space and threat. Anyone can peel, but the degree of their effectiveness varies greatly in situations. You do not necessarily need crowd control to be peeling for your teammate, although it greatly helps. Simple things such as body blocking on hit skill shots, high damage to kill an aggressor, or team steroids can be enough to fit the job. Even so, proper usage of crowd control still has the most versatility when it comes to peeling. This is merely trying to state that there is a time and place for everything, and it is vital to maximize effectiveness. Everyone should be familiar with the body block. If you don't know what it is, you have often seen it against Caitlyn players anyways because of how her ultimate can be blocked. Anyone can body block of course, but it's something you should only do if the threat is major, or if you can handle the damage you'll be receiving, or if your teammate is too valuable to lose. On the concept of creating distance, it is exactly what it sounds like. All champions in the game have ranges at which they are the most effective, and it is very important to know the effective range of a champion because that encompasses how much space that champion can threaten at a given time. Let's say a champion is only threatening at melee range. If they are on top of your teammates, that means they are currently threatening your teammates. Now if they have zero threat beyond melee range, that means if you can manage to keep them at a distance, then they'll be rendered ineffective. Pay attention to the clip being shown. The enemy Rek'Sai can tear my Akali teammate apart, but she's only threatening in melee range. I do not use my peeling tool immediately until Rek'Sai finally reaches Akali. That is when she'd finally come under fire and risk being killed. Of course, she did flash, but the point still stands. This does bring in another key peeling notion though. There is a difference between peeling to defend and peeling to control, and this is what separates the great players from the lesser. This isn't only on the bodyguards either, but on the cooperation between teammates and the defender. Basically put, the peeler controls the threat of the aggressors, and those they are defending position themselves to lessen potential threat at the same time. To take it to another level, the bodyguard peels for their teammates to defend them, while at the same time making sure to preserve their team's ability to fight. This clip ends in failure, but the event still perfectly shows what was just mentioned. While Olaf does everything in his power to defend the Jinx, she retreats to make distance between the threats and herself while at the same time staying within range to throw out some damage. She worked with the Olaf in order to attempt to preserve her life. If she had just stood still and hoped for the defense to pull through by themselves, she may have died even quicker. Another concept to learn is to zone out threats while controlling others. You can deter the enemy simply with the threat of crowd control and damage. If your opponents recognize your threat, then they would be hesitant to cross you. Imagine being a beefy tank working as a front line. The enemy team engages on you and you manage to isolate a few of them. You could throw yourself at half the enemy team while your teammates focus on taking down the other half. This clip perfectly shows this. The Scion engages on Mundo's team but ends up being body blocked. Mundo then pops his ultimate and runs straight through the enemy team, forcing them to back away. He is threatening enough that he gains the enemy aggro and forces them to retreat. Because they cannot defend their MVPs, they end up having to leave Scion to die for essentially free. Blue team is then able to sweep up the rest of the enemy team and gain a tremendous victory over them. So how do you actually go about peeling? Players and viewers keep asking me how to put this in practice, and honestly there's no way to learn it other than experience. However, I can give you 3 tips that would help you become better at defending your teammates. Use the examples in the background to give you an idea of what they mean. Number 1 is patience. In the clip being shown, Nunu uses Snowball on Nautilus immediately just for damage since it's a low cooldown spell. Once Skarner shows up, he switches to him since Skarner is more affected by the slow from the spell than Nautilus is. Nunu positions his ultimate so it can slow the entire enemy team and basically splits them apart. It ends up being a full channel and he obliterates the enemy team. Being patient is incredibly important. You do not want to blow your key abilities randomly just because you have a trigger finger, and you do not want to engage in a threat while other opponents can be just as threatening. Preserve your best abilities for key moments and try to have as much information on the situation before deciding on a game plan. It's a catastrophe if you blow your cooldowns on a threat and end up giving an opening to another threat that you have no answer to now. Number 2 is balance. In this clip, Nautilus zones out the entire enemy team by using his body and threat of crowd control to deter them. Rammus tries to engage, but he's blocked by Nautilus. Notice how only low cooldown abilities are being used on Rammus. That is because Rammus is no threat by himself, and Nautilus needs his ultimate and hook to control the threat of Katarina and Lucian. Once Kennen arrives, Nautilus switches to the offensive and all hell breaks loose. The battle is bloody and they trade evenly, but Nautilus' team is able to secure Dragon in the end. Rammus took so much free damage at the start because his teammates could not follow up as they had been zoned out. One of blue team's threats was neutralized early as well. If the Zyra hadn't been greedy, then the victory might have been even cleaner as she wouldn't have died. So it would have been a 3-for-2 and a dragon. You must respond to threats with a proper response. Do not waste your best ability on a target that isn't a high threat or could have been answered with a lesser form of peeling. This basically means to use low cooldown abilities on lesser threats while preserving your fastest and most costly CC on immediate threats. Sometimes even just holding the crowd control can be enough deterrence for the enemy to reconsider even attacking your teammates. Number 3 is courage. This one definitely does sound abstract, but damn it if I don't see a ton of cowardly bodyguards. It is not necessary to die as a bodyguard, but you have to acknowledge that your life is worth less than your carry in a majority of scenarios. If your death can guarantee the death of 2 or more enemies or even just one very important foe, then it's often worth it, although not if it also puts your teammates at risk. You have to be willing to take a beating, even if it feels like you didn't really do anything. Any shot you take is one less shot someone else on your team could have taken. Every second you waste on the enemy team is another second your teammates have to run around freely. In all the clips you see in the background, I'm playing the tank and I'm in the front line just getting hammered by the enemy team. But it's allowing my teammates to fire back safely and position themselves safely. It's allowing them to preserve key abilities in case they need it during the fight, instead of just instantly during it. I can come close to dying, and sometimes I do just flat out die, but we still win fights, and eventually can still win the game. I love being a tank player. While some may not find a score of 0, 4, and 20 glamorous, I do, as it shows that player is someone capable of setting up others for victory and winning as a team. A tank may not get as much praise as the carry, but it's silly if people don't think the tanks are as much responsible for the victory as the carries are. Remember though, the best way, and frankly the only way, to learn how to be a proper bodyguard is through practice. So expect to make some bad calls here and now, but learn through your mistakes and you'll eventually be pulling miracles when you start saving really reckless AD carries. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Make sure to also check out the sponsors that make this channel possible. Links to their websites are in the description below.